As we begin, maybe it can come with a sense of returning, a sense of familiarity, a sense of coming home to oneself. I always find that easier early in the morning, in the general war against distraction and fatigue and weariness. Easier to touch in with that sense of coming back to oneself. But just sitting here and now with that intention to engage in ways that promote healing integrity is in and of itself an accomplishment. So A for accomplishment, and we can add 3 A's, accomplishment, attention, and a complete and utter acceptance that the extraordinary configuration of what's happening in this present moment is what we've got. And what we've got is utterly extraordinary. So let's touch in with attention and with the breath together. Since we want to engage deeply with the physicality of breath, and when you're more used to working with that, there's no shortage of rich sensations to anchor your attention to. But maybe just to begin, if you put your left hand on your belly and your right hand on your chest, as we've done before, and that can add another sense of feedback, really, of the movements of the breath. And so we can start by enhancing the physicality, sense of deeper physicality of the rise and fall of the rhythm, of the rise and fall of the breath. So as your attention opens in this way to the lift and the fall, and without losing a sense of the anchor that those movements you can feel under your hands. Just as we settle down, we've used this phrase, settling down and calming up. Settle down into the base of support. While that kind of settles in, consider what right now are your distractions in chief. There's no shortage here of fears, worries, anxieties, weariness, tiredness, fatigue. They may sort of configure differently for different individuals, but the general sense of what obstacles there are to maintaining a sense of the engagement, deeper engagement with the tissue life of the movement of the breath. So as you drop your hands back down again, again take in the fact that there may be a kind of afterglow, a kinesthetic after image of, and maybe that sense that fading engram of your hand on your belly, your hand on your chest, can help to continue that sense of it is depth, really. And so you can continue to anchor your attention to the breath and be firm and gentle, firm but gentle with the distractions that as we go deeper into the physicality of it, will get in the way. So towards the end of the last session, we considered conception, that there is a moment just before that first fertilized cell, the moment of conception, and there's a moment immediately after it, and then there is only, in that moment, one infinitesimally small cell, and that's all there is. It can call upon nothing else. It's totally self-sufficient. And contains everything that it needs to transport us to this moment. Wow. So is that first fertilized cell still present? We don't know for sure, but what we do know for absolute certain is that its multi-trillion cell progeny certainly are still there, still present, and each one containing its own DNA blueprint, the same blueprint that was contained in that infinitely small cell when there was only one. And it is just truly awesome blueprint, regulated, guided, orchestrated, an extraordinary process of growth and development. And it's still going on moment by moment. The blueprint is still there. It fires up more in circumstances of rest and sleep and regeneration, but it's always there. And the complexity that's involved is utterly awesome. And to even come close to touching in with the process now, in this moment, would be to appreciate its utter life-affirming beneficence. It's always in the process of trying to improve itself, which is what evolution is, and the force of it. So the explosion of cell growth at the start, tens of thousands of reproductions of the same cell, to the moment when they differentiate, the cells start to be different from one another, and at that point they form plates or sheets, and then comes the first fold. And that first fold is right down the center of your spine. There's a tiny little hole in the middle of the discs, still there. So you can allow your attention to spread and become aware of the presence of the spine. Right now, inhabit your posture. Alignment. The support of the ground. The way that the spine supports the energy and movement of each breath. We've been taking potential spaces that are very small and using your attention to open and elaborate the space. In particular, the space that can become a moment of suspension that allows you to inhabit the zone between the bottom of the out breath and the beginning of the next in breath. I like to track that point by thinking in terms of the moment that I would breathe in while I'm speaking or whatever I'm doing. And the fact that there is a residual amount of air in that process that we can work with as we enter more fully and deeply into the zone of that. We mentioned at the start the A for acceptance. And certainly that sense of patience and acceptance is part of the ethos of entering into that zone. And it's just true that the longer you inhabit it, the more obviously grateful you are for the next breath. But if you could again place your hands in that position, so we'll that's right hand on the upper part of the chest and the left hand around the belly button area. And this time we're going to be a little bit more specific. If you could arrange for your thumb to be at the top of the breastbone where the collarbones and the breastbones meet, so the thumb is along the length of the sternum or breastbone. And again, we're going to kind of portion off the block of time for that breath, those dozen or so breaths, and the right hand thumb there can follow a very natural movement of dropping or falling as it enters into that final section of the out breath. See if you can find that. So that falling, even just using the presence of gravity to allow that to happen, is helping to ease the breath out. So over the next half a dozen or so breaths, see if it's possible to continue the feeling of dropping that you're picking up through the thumb as you enter that zone. And let the expansion of the breath go anywhere else other than lifting where your thumb is, the whole length of your thumb. So you'll discover that the breastbone can continue to fall softly, almost under the force of gravity. And the in-breath does most of its work, is completed by the time you get a sense that if you took any more breath, it would start to lift your breastbone. So in the present circumstances of stillness and rest, we do not need that. But it's the sense as to how something that is happening in that zone, mainly the dropping of the breastbone, can continue. Okay, if you drop your hands there. So there's a sense of greater physical expansion. I don't know about for you, but there's the whole length of the back, the ribs at the back expand, particularly the ones at the bottom. The belly expands, and the flanks in particular, the side ribs, all of that expansion. And none of it involving anything onto that right hand thumb. Again, if you can stay with whatever afterglow sensations there are of kind of warmth or pressure, it can help to deepen the process. So we're going to spend the remaining few minutes here probing more deeply into the physicality of the breath and the way that the breath is continually working to support the core. In this sense, the core is the blueprint of regeneration, of integrity, of healing and renewal. It's so utterly and completely beneficent. So there's a point of entry, which is either the mouth or nostrils. Nostrils are best. And then thereon, the breath becomes a current, but it really only becomes an inner, the inside, when it's crossed the membranes of the lungs, and it's generally enriched, nutrified, and ready for transport, and everywhere will be touched, nutrified. In the process of life, there is a continuous dealing with cells that have broken away and become uncontrolled. They're no longer respecting, they're no longer playing their role and their position in the blueprint. It's not something special that happens, it's ongoing. And right at this moment, we want to enhance that process. They can be hard to identify because they're part of the cellular community. It's just that they've become wayward. They're not anymore behaving under the regulation of the blueprint. So that's one hell of a journey from the point of entry of the touch of the breath around the nostrils to deep into the cellular matrix. But before we bring attention back to the outside, and let attention be concerned as it will be with all the different demands of the day, rest of the day. Consider the possibility right now that the breath, in its infinitely sensitive touch, can choose not to nutrify the rogue breakaway cells. Again, that's ongoing for all of us, the same. But in the present circumstances, we want to enhance that sense of life-affirming regulation. I've grown fond of the idea of when we return from these very deep journeys into the inner cellular matrix, that we come back through that hole in the middle, the absolute center of yourself, through the length of the backbone, from where you feel the support of the ground, through the length of the backbone of the ribs supporting the movement of the breath, through to the aligned balance and lightness of your head perched on top, and if you're ready to make that re-entry, that's great. Let's